Hi friends, and welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you will enjoy today's beading inspiration. Today I'm making a beaded chain bracelet utilizing some beautiful 4mm olive jade gemstones and some 6mm crystals. A very lightweight whimsy bracelet on the Coriana beading chain, also known as Cordana chain, beading chain, tomato, we call it several different things, but a really great chain. Really like this type of chain for something that's very lightweight, especially in the warmer months, because it just wears so nicely. It's super lightweight and a perfect type of chain to put these tiny little gemstones on. I'm also going to be using some clamshells. So we'll have some clamshells. We have a couple of 2x2 crimps. We have some 5mm oval jump rings. I also am using 2 head pins for some dangles. And then I also have a clasp. Of course, you can use any clasp. This is a really cool clasp. I love these. This is a magnetic with an extender on either side, this little tab here on one side, and then a lobster on the other, which is removable. So if you needed more length, you can keep that on. I might need to remove it. If you don't need the length, you can remove that and just add your jump rings right there to your clasp. So any clasp will do. This is 0.8mm Coriana beading chain in stainless steel that I am using. I will link this in the video. I do have some of this in my store, and I think I might have some of these olive jade gemstones left, as well as the 304 stainless steel clamshells. The other thing I'm using, as I mentioned, is the crimps. Now notice the crimp tubes that I'm using here, that there's one that's in a gunmetal and then one that's in silver. Okay, so this gunmetal one, I'm using it for contrast for the purposes of filming, is going to be forever hidden though underneath our clamshell. So it really does not matter. So if you're making, for example, some gold jewelry and have gold crimps, you can use any color crimp you want in your that goes inside your clamshell, right? It doesn't, because you'll never see it again. So that is why I have a gunmetal crimp out. I'm also going to be using my chain nose pliers, of course my round nose pliers, and my cutter tool today. So notice what I've done. I've already basically fed on the majority of my pattern. I will finish off both sides exactly the same. So if you're not familiar with how to finish off your Coriana beading chain, this is a very beginner friendly project and technique. So I did cut my beading chain to start out. I just put it around my wrist, a piece of my chain, and I basically cut it where I had about 1 inch of a gap in my wrist here. So I cut it where my chain would end here and here, because I know the rest would be filled up with my closure. So that is how I measured my chain, and then I will show you how to finish this. I just put on a crimp, we'll do a clamshell, I put an oval on here, and then attached my clasp. The other thing that I'm going to do on this particular bracelet is notice right here where I started out with a crimp. So we are going to start and end the project with one of the 2x2 silver crimp tubes right here. And what that's going to do is just kind of help keep our beads in place. That is not necessary. If you want to eliminate this crimp on either end, you absolutely can. But I just like to keep everything away from my closure. So in other words, I didn't really want my beads going all the way to that clam. The other thing is, by doing a crimp on either side, it allowed me to have an even number of beads in my pattern. So that is what I'm doing. So we're gonna just simply, what you're gonna do to get started is you would feed on a crimp, and I'll show you in a second, but to start, I fed on a crimp, the gunmetal. We'll push it all the way right up to the end, and you'll see me do it in a minute. You'll go ahead and squeeze that, and then pull your clamshell up, close your clamshell, and that is how I started. And then I fed on a crimp and then started my pattern. So you'll see me do exactly what I did here in a minute to end it. So you'll start and end it the same way. just duplicate the technique on both sides of your bracelet. Very, very, very simple. So I'm going to go ahead and just continue here to feed my beads on my chain. So I have 3 of the olive jade. And what's really nice about the coin and beading chain, it does come in several different sizes. This is a 0.8 millimeter. So most of my beads will fit on this chain. Some of the pearls and some of the check glass have a little smaller hole, so they may not. But most of your beads you will find. I don't like to go less than a 0.8 millimeter beading chain. I also use a 0.9 millimeter. So 0.8 or 0.9 I would recommend just for strength and durability. You don't want your beading chain to be too thin, right? So that would be my recommendation. Let me just get this on there. Okay, and then I have one more crystal. And then I think I have 3 final olive jade rounds here. And then what I'm going to do is feed on that crimp, that silver crimp. So I'm also going to put on now my crimp, okay? And so now this is what we have. So we have a crimp, and then our whole pattern, and then we ended it with the crimp as well. And now what I will do is, because I'm ending it, I need to feed my clamshell on first. And you want to feed your clamshell with the belly facing up and out, right? So I'll go ahead and get my chain fed right through that clamshell and let that drop on down. And now I am going to grab the gunmetal crimp. So this is a 2x2 crimp tube. Okay, and that's on there. So now I am going to use my pliers now. So notice what I have at the end here, right? So you have a crimp, then you have your clamshell belly up, and then we have another crimp. So what we want to do is we are going to pull this crimp down to just about the edge of the beading chain, but we need a little bit of a tail here, right? So that that crimp can grab on to that beading chain. Okay, so you don't want too big of a tail because you want everything hid underneath that clamshell, but we don't want it to be where it's like this, right? We really want to make sure that the full crimp is on the beading chain. So we'll leave a smidge of a tail, and then we're going to go ahead and squeeze. And can also use your crimping, your good old faithful crimping pliers. If you just do the flat crimp like I just did, I just do it one time. And then I do want to go ahead and do my tug test. So I'm going to pull on that crimp and make sure that it grabbed on to that chain, and it did. Okay, and so now we'll pull that clamshell up to the crimp here, right? You can also add a little dab of glue right here for good measure. That's a very good idea. So if you want to use some GS Hypo, E6000, or super glue, which is my preference when working with the chain and the metal, use some of the Loctite gel control. I will link it in the video for you guys, the one that I use. Put a little dab in here before you close it up. That's going to make sure that that lasts for years to come. Plus we're using stainless steel findings, right, so nothing's going to tarnish. So I'm just going to now squeeze that clamshell, and then I'll help it along by grabbing the loops there, okay? And I will then go on the belly. And notice I'm just tapping it. I'm not being too aggressive because these clamshells, they are delicate, right? But you do want to have it closed, so we'll go like that. And just make sure that it's nice and closed, okay? And now, before I finish my ends to see if I need to take this extender off my clasp, what I would do now is I can go ahead and put it on my wrist and see if it's too big, and it is. So The only thing I need to do here is just remove that lobster and that tabby on the end of my clasps. Now, these magnetics I love because they're actually really good and secure. I really love them. So a lot of people are just really against using magnetic clasps because they, are afraid to lose their jewelry. These particular ones right here, I love. So I am going to go ahead and open up that jump ring and open up my 5mm oval here and get that tab off. And I'm just going to eliminate that tab because I don't need the length. So we'll just get rid of that. And I will now just put the magnetic portion directly on and make sure that my jump ring is closed. And the same thing over here, I can go ahead and get rid of the lobster, and I can actually reserve this lobster for another project. It's a perfectly good lobster clasp. Pull the bracelet up where the clamshells are and get that fed right through those ovals. And now my closure is good to go. Make sure those are good and closed. And I think that's probably a whole lot better. And it is. So just the perfect length. And so now those last two crimps, no, I did not forget. So the reason that I put these two crimps on here is so it's going to stabilize my beads. Now, if you want them to travel up and down your bracelet, you absolutely could, because it's really beautiful, the Coriana beading chain, to kind of peek through, right? It's very, very pretty. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and smush each of these crimps onto my chain, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of move these crimps against my beads, slide everything towards the center to where I have about right around 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch of chain on either side, and go ahead and crimp that down. But I don't want it to be too tight, so I am going to move it out a smidge. So now that I know they're even on both sides, I'm going to hold one side, and I am going to grab this crimp, I'm going to pull it over just about 1/4 of an inch, and then I'll go ahead and squeeze that to adhere to the chain. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Grab that crimp between my pliers, come out about 1/4 inch, and then I'll go ahead and squeeze it. And that adhered that to the chain. Okay, and then as you can see, when we are wearing it, let me fold it around here. When you're wearing your bracelet, it just has a little peekaboo, not a ton of the chain. Not a ton of the chain, and also the beads are away from my clamshells there. So really lovely, lovely way to finish off your beading chain bracelet, and very lightweight and quite whimsy, I might add, and dainty for the warmer months. So that's what that looks like. I hope you guys enjoyed today's beading inspiration, utilizing some Coriana beading chain, and we will see you in the next one. Until then, keep sparkling and be blessed.